Why do you seek the living among the dead? He is not here.
Hi, I'm Sharon Croft. In June of 2022, I started attending a little church in Cartersville, Georgia called Cornerstone Worship Center. Within a couple months of my first attending, I heard an amazing true story of a man named Justin Crumbley who was raised from the dead. I wanted to learn more, so in the fall of 2025, I had the opportunity to interview Justin Crumbley and his amazing mom, Lisa, about their experience of resurrection from the dead. And it's a story of faith and perseverance. If you want to learn how to live a life of faith, even in the toughest of times, I encourage you to stick around and listen to Justin and Lisa's story. Join me in my living room now with Justin and Lisa.
Yes.
So go ahead, Justin. Do you want to get started?
Sure. It was the day before Halloween, October 20, 2008, right? And I was putting my baby's mama's, she had a daughter at the time, and I was putting her in the car, and I remember driving them up this hill in their neighborhood, and then like poof, like everything went blank after that. And then and then the story kind of began. You know, I was in a movie theater, and all I remember is looking up and nobody was in there. And I just looked up and saw a big white screen and figured it might have been my life or something that I was, that God wanted to show me or something. And it was just blank. It was just a white screen and nothing was there. And I looked up and nobody was in the theater. It was just me. And I was like, well, what am I doing? So I got out, went to some double doors, then went through the atrium, where everybody goes and gets popcorn and stuff. Then I went through some more double doors and saw a building, and looked outside and saw a building with a staircase on the side of it, and saw everybody walking up it, and I was like, might as well walk up it too, because everybody else is. So I walked up it, and there's an incline hallway going up to the rooftop, and there was classrooms like in a high school, and there's like classrooms on each side, and everybody was playing Halo. It was very weird, but everybody was playing Halo. Like every time I passed a classroom, they always asking me if I wanted to stop and play. Like, come play. I was like, no, I got something I gotta do, and I didn't stop or nothing. Just kept walking. I walked up to the rooftop, walked through some more double doors. And then I walked to the edge of the roof, or edge of the rooftop, and saw a big golden city. And this city was beautiful. I mean, I can't even explain it in words how awesome it was. It was just full of gold. Like the streets were gold, the mailboxes were gold, the trees were gold, the little doggies that were running in the sidewalk were gold. And that's it. And poof, all of a sudden I was in front of God. And all I could see was his big Jesus sandals, and all I could see all the way up to his kneecaps was all I could see, and all he was saying was, go back. And I was like, I don't want to go back. I feel way too good. I had nothing wrong with me at the time, because when I came back, I couldn't walk or talk or do anything else. But when I was up there, I could do everything. I did backflips in front of him. I did somersaults. I was like, man, I feel way too good. Don't want to go anywhere else. He's like, no, I got something else for you. You got to go back. I was like, all right. Well, then I came back, and so I guess it's when I started breathing or something. So, yeah, it's about my story begins, I guess. So.
So, was this on October 30th?
31st.
Okay, October 31st?
I actually had just gotten out of the shower and my phone rang, which I thought was pretty crazy because it was like around 7 o'clock. And I answered it, and it actually was Nathan's, which is our grandson, which is his son now. Mother. And she said, you need to get to the hospital. I've taken Justin to the hospital. And I'm like, what is going on? Y'all been in a wreck? What's happened? She said, no, he's, she kind of made it sound like he had been drinking too much. And that's what I figured. I thought maybe he had alcohol poisoning or something because he was having problems with drinking. And I'm like, what were y'all doing? Where have you been? And I was trying to ask all these questions. I was like, what's happening? She said, I took him to Northside. So I'm assuming it's Northside Canton because that's, pretty much closer to where we are. And thank goodness I happened to say something about Canton. She goes, no, Northside in Atlanta. And I'm like, what in the world are y'all doing in Atlanta? And I really don't know why I was asking all these questions. It was just off the top of my head. So I proceeded to ask her, where are you? And she said, I had to leave. I had to go pick up her little girl. And so I said, all right, fine, I'm going now. So I threw some clothes on, took off, started praying. I remember going down 285, just praying, Lord, I don't know what is going on. Please help me. Give me faith, help me to believe, help make sure everything's okay, which, is normal prayer for your children. I don't care how old they are. But I felt a peace. I can't even explain it. It was just a peace. The only way I can explain it is the peace that passes all understanding, as the Bible tells us. And I got to the hospital. I had called my husband, I called my daughter and told them that I wasn't sure what was happening, but Justin was in the hospital. No one had mentioned anything to me at that point. The hospital never called me. And this was 7 o'clock, like I said, so it was probably closer to 8 by then. I walked into the emergency room and I told them who I was and told them I said they brought my son in. And I said, at some point this morning, and I noticed all eyes were on me, and everyone was acting kind of strange, and I could feel tension, and I'm like, what is going on? And at that time, the lady at the desk told me, said, can you just wait here just a moment? I'm going to get the doctor for you. And I said, where is my son? And they said, well, just wait. Nobody was telling me anything. So I was getting pretty frustrated. So at that time, a chaplain comes out, and he says, I'm going to take you to the family room. And I'm like, I know what the family room is. I worked in a hospital. So you need to tell me what's going on. I know you go to the family room when something's serious, so just talk to me. The chaplain is talking to me and trying to calm me down a little bit because I was getting pretty, I'm like, can somebody just tell me where my son is? And because nobody's telling me anything, obviously, because the doctor's got to talk to me. And so he says, the doctor's going to be here in a minute and talk to you. And, he's trying to, keep me a little calm. And I'm like, okay. And I'm like, God is good. I know everything's going to be okay. So I'm like trying to calm myself down at that point. And the doctor finally comes in, which seemed like forever. I'm sure it wasn't, but it seemed like. And he came in and he said, introduced himself and told me that Justin had been brought in around 5-something. And that a young lady had brought him in and that he was in the back seat, that he was had asphyxiated, which, for those who don't know, which he had threw up and choked on his own, throw up, and aspirated and literally died. And she was in a Waffle House from what she told him. And when she came back to the car, he wasn't breathing. And she realized he wasn't breathing. And obviously she took him, instead of taking him to the hospital at that point, she took him to someone's house, and someone performed CPR on him and collapsed his lung because they didn't know what they were doing. And this is from the doctor. And then he said, then she proceeded to bring him to the emergency room. He was in the back seat, and the doctor told me that it took 6 people. I mean, you can tell he's a pretty big boy, but took 6 people to pull him out of the back seat. And he said he was DOA when he arrived. And I'm like, and that's the first time I had heard that. And I'm like, DOA? And he says, you know what that means? I'm like, yes, I worked in a hospital. You're saying he was dead on arrival. What are you talking about? And he said, your son was not breathing when they brought him in. And from what it sounds like, he had to be not breathing for over 45 minutes because of where she was and where they had taken him, at least 45 minutes. So, and he said, we proceeded to work on him for over 45 minutes. And he said, he is on a ventilator. He is not breathing on his own. The ventilator is breathing for him. And I'm like, I just need to see my son. I said, can I please see him? He said, yes, we're going to take you in there, but I want you to be prepared. He's not breathing on his own. And I said, but it's going to be okay. That's all I could say was it's going to be okay. And I'm sure at that point they thought, okay, I've got another psycho mom, or something. But they proceeded to take me in there. As I got in there, he looked like a shell. There was no life in him at that point. It looked like there was no life in him. He was very dirty, and I asked them, I said, can you please clean him up? And she said, yes. She said, we're going to clean him up. She said, we just hadn't had a chance because we've been working on him for so long. And then I looked at him, and I held his hand, and I said, if you can hear me, Justin, I said, I want you to squeeze my hand. And he squeezed my hand. And I told him, I said, he just squeezed my hand. He is not dead. And there was a nurse standing right here behind me. And I remember her putting her arm around me, and she goes, I know how you feel. She said, but just, I want you to be okay. She wanted me to be okay. And I said, y'all are going to see a miracle. And the minute I said that, I knew that was from God, and that's all I could tell anybody. That's what I told everybody that came around me. You're going to see a miracle. Honestly, it was a faith statement because it was just it's all I knew to say. I didn't know, I knew what God was going to do. I didn't know how he was going to do it, when he was going to do it, or anything, but I knew that that's what I had to say. And she was trying to comfort me, and she said, well, that's pretty much reactions they have, their bodies, once their bodies have shut down. And I said, but you're going to see a miracle. You're going to see a miracle. And honestly, I didn't care what they thought, except that I wanted them to know that God was going to do something, and they're going to see something spectacular. And my husband walked in, and who is usually the very, very strong one, broke down, started crying, and I said, no, we're not going to cry. We're not going to cry. I said, we're only going to have faith. We're not going to cry. We're going to believe. And no one that can come around him that does not have faith, and no crying. I said, I'm not trying to be mean, but if you can't have faith, we're not going to get around him, because we're going to pump faith into this guy, and we're going to believe. We believe. And I don't know, I just decided from that point I was going to be the faith warrior. I don't care who.
Mama Bear.
Mama Bear, yeah, I guess that was pretty much, yeah. I did, I become Mama Bear. And so my husband had called our pastor from Cornerstone, which we've been under his ministry for many, many years. who is devout faith, teaches us faith, and I'm so thankful that faith has been put inside of me, because I don't think if I had been taught that, I would have been able to do that. I really don't. But being taught that faith walk, I was able to do that. I was able to believe with everything in me by not seeing the evidence, but being able to walk through it, and everything, all you heard was negative, negative. You know, he's dead, he's not moving, there's no brain activity. I can't tell you how many times I heard there's no brain activity. Every nurse, everybody, you understand there's no brain activity. They're trying to treat me like I'm crazy. And I'm like, I understand what you're telling me, but you're going to see a miracle. That's, you know? And I believed everything I said because I knew what God told me. And that's all I had to go on. And that's what I was going to keep doing. And our pastor came up. He was there every day. My pastor's wife was there every day. People started coming in by the groves and groves and groves. And you know, there's a lot of kids from the school come to see him, and they were just letting him in. And finally, a nurse had told us they were just letting him come in to say goodbye. And it's a good thing they didn't tell me that then, because I probably would have had something to say about it. But I would tell him when I went out there, I'm like, if you're going to go in there and you're going to cry, don't go in. You go in there and you talk to him just like he's going to talk right back to you. I said, you go in there and you tell him, come on. You're going to come play basketball. You're going to do everything you're going to do. I said, don't go in there and cry and get all upset. I said, if you go in there, I want you to speak peace over him. And I meant it. I wasn't playing. I'm like, we're not going to do this. And I had to actually send my husband out a couple of times because he was so upset and crying, which he's always been the strong one. But he just had a rough time. And not that he doesn't have faith. Please don't take it that way. But you know, he just had a rough time with this one. And but there was that moment, and I'll admit this was the moment I felt I got weary. I totally got weary, but I held his hand, because I held his hand most of the time, and I said, Justin, I'm not leaving until you wake up and you look at me and you tell me to leave. You're going to have to look me in the face, and you're going to have to tell me to leave this hospital. And I got weary, and I went to the bathroom so well, and I went in there and I said, Lord, I even apologized to God. I said, I'm weary. I'm tired. I'm exhausted. I need something. I said, I know that's not faith, and I don't want anybody to know have this conversation but you and I said, but can you give me something, just something? And I said, I know that's not faith, but I would really appreciate something. And I almost was weary about even telling that part of the story, because faith is not something you see. But it was so relevant in this, just to show you how precious God is and how sweet and kind He is when we are tired and we're weary. I came out, I dried my eyes, I came out, and I'm like, I felt like I could fight a bull. I mean, I did. I was fine then. I was like, okay, got it over with, now I'm good. And I went back in the room, sat back down. People kept coming back in, and the pastor came in, and he said, well, I'm going to leave now. And I was like, okay, because he had been there. He walked to the door, and he stood there. And I was standing here on his side, and my husband was here. And then the pastor walked back to the end of the bed. And he was standing at the end of the bed. And I think at one point we joked about, because they had to get feet extenders for him because he's so tall. Mm-hmm. It was hilarious. They were looking for feet extenders for him. He said, he's a tall kid. I was like, yeah, he is. And he looked at me. He looked at Justin. He said, God said, I have spared his life. And I looked at him, I said, thank you, God. I knew that that was God. That he answered my prayer that quick. It was within 10 minutes. I was like, my pastor did not know I was in the bathroom crying, asking for something, but that's how sweet God is and how precious he is. Even though I was bound and determined to do this faith walk, because I knew that that's what I needed to do, but he still was so kind and so gentle to give me something, and that's all I needed, because you got to realize that every time a nurse doctor came in, there was just doctor after doctor. There's no brain activity. There's nothing, they were wanting us to pull, they said, he's got a lot of healthy organs. And they told my daughter that. And my daughter said, do not tell my mom that. She will eat you up. I'm telling you. And my daughter told me that later, because they never told me that. And then they tried taking him off the respirator on Saturday. And the nurse he had, he told my daughter, he said, he threw me around like a yo-yo. He said, all over that bed. And I said, see? And they said, no, that's just the reaction of your body when it's shut down. That's all we kept hearing. And, but they kept saying there's no brain activity, So then on Sunday, they put him back on the respirator. But they kept saying, we really need to talk to you about taking him off the respirator, telling my daughter that. So we really need you to talk to your mom. So that just shows you how they kind of were scared to talk to me, but because of what I believed, and probably afraid they would send me off the edge or something. And my daughter was like, no, don't talk to her about that. No. And because, I know it's their job, and I know that's what they see, no brain activity, the guy's got healthy, but no. So they told me they were going to take him off on Monday morning, take him off the respirator, and basically let him die. That was the way they thought. Well, Sunday afternoon, the neurologist came in. We were standing out in the hallway, and we were standing there, and he said, I'm sorry, there's no brain activity. We said, will you just check one more time? And he said, okay. And like I said, that was probably just to appease us. And he came back a good bit later after the results came back, and he said, there's something. I don't know what it is, but there's something. He never did say it was brain activity, but he said there's something. Well, come Monday morning, I knew they were going to take him off the respirator. We were standing there. They took it off. Then eyes popped open. He looked at me. I said, I never knew your eyes were so blue. That's all I could think of. And I really didn't. And I said, well, hey. I said, welcome back. And he just looked at me like, what is happening? He couldn't speak. He really couldn't talk. He could move, but, really wasn't sure what he was going to do. At that point, I didn't care. I knew God had it, whatever was going to happen. And so, they had already come to me, and they was already, wow, this kid is awake. He's awake. That's like number one big thing. But, then they started the Down syndrome, the thing of, okay, he's not going to walk. He's probably not going to talk. And, he's not going to be able to move, blah, blah, blah. I said, he's going to be okay. You're going to see a miracle. You're going to see a miracle. And so, I wish I had the pictures of when he looked like life was out of him, to the point to where there he was, where the life came all back into him. It was just amazing. And then from then, but what was the coolest part was the doctor came into the room, the doctor who worked on him so long. And the one piece I do want to say is he told the nurse that he wished he hadn't worked on him so long. This is before he woke up. He said, because I've delivered a vegetable to this family. And he says, I wished I hadn't worked on him so long. And the nurse told my daughter that. And she said, no, we're glad he did. We're glad he did work on him so long. So he came, and going forward, he came when he woke up that day. He came straight up to see him. And so I don't know if they called him in or what, but he came up and he says, "Hi, I'm Dr. Funk." And he said, and he had his wife with him. She's the ER
What was his
doctor
name?
too. Funk, Dr. Funk.
Dr. Funk.
He came in and he said, he says, "Well, hi." He said, "Hi." He said, do you remember me?" And Justin said, "No." And he said, "Well, you should." He said, "Because I was on top of you and on your chest for," he said, "for a long time beating on you." And he said, "Does your chest hurt?" Justin said, "No." He said, "It should." and so his wife, tears started rolling. And I said, "Thank you." I said, "You don't know that you were doing God's work, but you were." And then he started to cry. I said, "You did exactly what you were supposed to do." I said, "So anytime you're doing something," I said, "just keep doing it, because obviously God told you to keep working on him because he's alive." And I knew he wasn't going to die. I knew it. And they both were crying. I mean, it was just, I mean, he said, "You go forth," but he said, you got things to do." And then he proceeded to tell him, he said, he's seen about 10 overdoses like that. And he said he was the only one that lived out of all of them that he's done and had worked on. And then they left, and we later went back to see him just to tell him, just so he could see how great he did. But from then on, he started doing some therapy then. It looked pretty bleak. He couldn't do anything. He couldn't tie his shoes, couldn't dress himself, couldn't eat. He couldn't do anything. But I was like, "No, I don't believe God's brought you back to be," I just don't, I don't believe it. And then and you got to remember he's left-handed. For those who didn't know, he is left-handed. She said, now he might not be left-handed, because the kind of weird thing about it was when they'd get him up to walk on a walker, he kept going to the right.
Mm-hmm.
It was kind of strange. And I was like, she said, he might not be left-handed anymore, because now that the brain has been shifted so much. And me being the kind of sneaky person that I am, they had the chart open over there when he was in, because first they had him in the heart, because his heart, obviously stopped.
Mm-hmm.
So they had him in the CCU part. So I went and looked in the chart, and believe me, what I read had a lasting effect on me, because it said he had a blown eye socket, heart stopped, DOA, amongst I don't know how much other stuff. Because we never knew about the eye socket, but that's another part that I also had forgot to speak on, was David and I looked at him one time. This is after he woke up, and his eyes started going crazy and went all the way around, and I looked at David and I said, "Did you see his eye?" He goes, "Yeah, what was that?" I said, "I don't know." And we both just went in prayer and started praying, and his eye just straightened right up. Just straightened right up. And that was after I had read the blown eye socket. It was kind of interesting. And I was like, no, God, you're going to do your work, and people are going to see this. So they started working with him. He was there, and I honestly can't remember how long he was there. Then they were going to transfer him to Floyd therapy up at Floyd in Cartersville, I think it is. Rome, I'm sorry. And it was kind of interesting, and they said he's got to go by ambulance. And I said, "Well, can we drive him?" And they said, "No." And they said his heart could stop any time. And I'm like, "I promise you, we will not stop." And they said, "If you promise us not to stop, not to do anything," we had to go through hoops to be able to drive him there. And but they said he could have a heart attack any second. And I was like, please, I begged, because I knew God wasn't going to let him have a heart attack. I just knew it. Or I wouldn't have took a chance like that. And, they were telling us, okay, if anything happens, you need to call 911, get rid of it. I was like, he's going to be fine. We drove him up there. And when we got to the therapy, when we got up there, all these people were standing there, and I was like, wow. I said, you got a greeting crowd. What is this all about? And I asked the little nurse that was standing there, she says, we read the report, and we wanted to see who this guy was that come in that's been dead and has risen from the dead. And we were like, and I said, look at here. I said, you got a greeting crowd. And it was pretty funny. And I said, well, here he is. He is alive. You see that? And I thought that was kind of cute. And because I guess they had all read the report and everything. And but then he began his journey, and within 3 weeks, he was playing basketball. Within 3 weeks.
Wow.
Yeah.
So like by the 3rd week in November, before Thanksgiving, you're playing basketball. So you died on Halloween 2008, and then by Thanksgiving.
I got out on Thanksgiving.
He came out on Thanksgiving.
You came out on Thanksgiving.
He was home for Thanksgiving.
And you were playing basketball at Thanksgiving?
Yeah.
Or Wow. So they said that when he arrived at the hospital, he'd already been dead for at least 45 minutes from what they could tell, just because of like the distance from the car travel, right?
Yes.
So what time did he arrive at the hospital? What did they tell you?
They said it was like between 5:30, 5:30, like it was like 5:38, somewhere around in there or something.
So at 5:38 approximately, he arrived at the hospital. They determined that he was dead on arrival. And they said at least 45 minutes. Maybe he died when that guy was doing CPR and they collapsed his lung on accident. Maybe he died before that.
Well, she claims he wasn't breathing when she came back to the car at the Waffle House. She said that from the story that she told, that when she came to the car, he was passed out. She thought he was passed out, but then because he was like, had choked on his own moment, but then she realized he wasn't breathing, and that's why she took him somewhere else. So somebody's house, some guy did CPR on him and collapsed his lung. Because the doctor said he asked her who did CPR on him because they collapsed his lung. Because I guess they could tell, by that. And she said, my friend did CPR on him and collapsed his lung. So that's how they knew he had to be dead. From where, and because I guess he was asking her all these questions. And then I think she got scared too, and that's why she left. Because the doctor started asking her questions, what did he take, what did he do, because they the tests were coming back with no, it wasn't an opiate, it was, it turned out to be heroin overdose. And we couldn't get that out of her. But finally, my daughter got the whole story out of her because she was pretty tough with her.
Yes, he'd probably been dead for at least an hour by the time he got there.
Yeah.
And then the doctor worked on him for 45 minutes after that. So, and then what time did you arrive?
I got the call around 7, so I was dressed in a minute, didn't even put on makeup, so I'm saying, I would say between 8 and 8:30, because I remember I was like, thank God there's no traffic. I can remember telling myself that and praying, so I'm thinking, because from my house it was probably a 30-minute drive, which was a miracle there was no traffic going from my house to getting to Northside Hospital.
So most likely by the time you arrived at the hospital, he'd been dead for at least 3, maybe 4 hours. Okay, so you told us a little bit about what you saw when you were dead. Can you tell us about what happened, like in waking up and your recovery and things like that?
Yeah, the recovery was tough. There was times, when my mom or nobody was there, I would just sit there and cry. I would cry and just be like, God, why me? And I would just, the doctors would come in and they would try therapy with me, and I could barely lift my arm up. They'd give me like certain things to do, like lift my arm up and put it to the side, and my brain was working fine, but my bodily functions, my functions couldn't work or something like that. So I, they were trying to get me to move my arm from side to side. I would be like, why are you making me do this? I mean, okay, I'll do that. Then I couldn't really move it or nothing. I was like, it's weird, and they'd tell me to tie my shoe, and I couldn't. I remember it like yesterday, really, but they tried to get me to tie my shoe, and I looked at my shoe, and I put my hands down to it, and I couldn't make my hands tie my shoe, and I'd look up at my mom and be like, I can't do this. I can't do this right now, and after a while, after doing it repetitively, just keep doing it, and finally got it, I guess, and it just like she said, I couldn't walk, couldn't talk, couldn't do anything. It would just take practice to doing it, really. Just I had physical and speech therapists come to my house, or come to their house when I got out of the hospital. That really helped me a bunch, because I know the speech therapist was good, because she would just make me say little things, like, I don't know, it would like kind of be like a little third grade something, like third grade test or something, would like say fad and salad and stuff like that. I'd be like, okay, and I'd say that, and after a while I'd get that down, and she'd get me to say some other words. I'd say them too, and the physical therapist, he was good too. He made me do downward dogs inside the house, and that was very, very hard. I couldn't do that right now, actually. Downward dog, that was like, kind of like walking like a caterpillar, but but not really, but yeah, he was very good. He went and played basketball with me. The first time I shot a basketball, I was terrible. At that time, I would shoot the basketball, it would be like way to the left or way to the right or way too short, but then, repetitively, after a while, I'd finally get it. I'd make baskets, I'd do stuff like I used to could do, it felt good. I really could do stuff that I could do almost better, but he worked out a lot, so that was good.
So how long did it take for your complete recovery from literally being dead to being fully recovered and being as good and healthy as you were before?
I really don't think there's like a time frame on that, because I think I'm really getting better by the day. By now till when that happened, I feel like I'm getting better by the day. I feel like, there's certain things that I couldn't do, like, I don't know, maybe 6 months ago or something, like, I don't know, like something at work, if I can like change a lawnmower blade now, I could do that easily now. It's all about repetitive movement. Like I always do that, and that's about it.
His speech and memory was mostly what he had to work the most on. And they, of course, tried to make him believe that you probably wouldn't get that back, because they try to tell you, once part of that brain is gone, but, we don't believe that, because I believe when God does the work, he does the work, and he's got much more for him to do, and he works on that. And it was funny, because they would say, well, his speech is really infected. I said, no, he mumbled before he had this. Before this happened, so I said, he talked like that anyway. So that was always that was kind of a joke we always had.
So can you tell me how you felt when you found out that your son was alive to see his son and your grandson? Tell me about that.
Well, when he was in therapy at Floyd, keep wanting to say college, not Floyd, Floyd, up at the Floyd
Medical Center.
Medical Center. Thank you. She come to see him, and we were there, and I had no idea that she was pregnant, and she actually told him because she thought he had forgot what she had, and she reminded him that she was, and I was like, okay, what is happening right now? And so I found out at that time, which I wasn't, I was like, okay, is this for real, or is she just doing this, and I didn't want to feel that way, but there's just been a lot of history with that situation. So, but anyway, she was like, it was what, 4 months later, what'd you say, or 5 months later?
Mm-hmm.
We had a grandbaby. And he had to learn how to do things really quick because we actually, he was 10 weeks old pretty much when we got full custody of him. And he obviously was well enough to go before a judge and get full custody of him. So that tells you how hard he worked, and
Wow.
yeah, sure did.
Wow. So what is the most significant impact on your life from that death experience and feeling like you and God had to do business, and like feeling like you were in the presence of Jesus and perfectly healthy in his presence and not wanting to go back? How has that impacted your life, that experience? Like, I guess you would call it in the throne room of God and seeing like the heavenly city. How has that impacted your life?
It has a bunch. I mean, having my son has really impacted me the most, I think, because, the way he was saying go back, and I had no clue on what he was getting me to go back for, and knowing that my son was on the way or whatever, and he was born, that's what I stand for today. I'd do anything for him, do anything for my son. And I think I would do anything for him now, because I know God brought me back for him, because if I wasn't alive, my parents could have said something about that, but it was hard for me to take care of a son myself, so.
Yeah, let me grab a Kleenex. Sorry, I should have these closer. Yeah, so
But he did a good job.
do you feel like you got a second chance?
Oh yeah.
Second and third.
Second and third?
Second and third.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I mean, he literally, because I was working full time, my husband was still working, and he had to help take care of him.
Yeah, I remember, like he was like, I don't know, 4 weeks old or something. And he was just crying. He would not stop crying. I stopped crying. I was like, I don't know what to do. I was like, I'm sitting there. I'm like having the physical therapist coming over, and I was like, well, I got to do something with him first because I don't know what to do with him, But I called my mom, and I called who, Diane or somebody.
Yeah, I had backup friends who would come help.
And I was like, somebody has to come get him now because I can't do nothing with him because he's just crying, And she came over and did her mom thing or whatever. So kind of.
It took a village, put it that way.
Yeah, kind of chilled him out and stuff. So that was good for that. But it was hard, trying to be there for him and had to go through that stuff myself, you know, it made me stronger as a person, and I wouldn't take nothing back. Take anything back.
I'm so glad that your mom had that faith. Just to only let faith-filled people in the room and only proclaim faith and miracles herself. I think if you wouldn't have been speaking life over him, and if you wouldn't have had the faith to hold out, you know, it might be a different ending.
It was a journey for all of us. It was definitely, it wasn't just his journey. It was a journey for all of us. And because like I said, if I had not been taught that faith, I don't know where we would be. I don't know if he would be here. I don't know. Don't want to know, because I knew I had to get that faith in me, and then I knew I was going to have it after Nathan was born, to know that everything was going to be okay. You know, that raising, you know, with him helping and us raising a child at our age, helping raise another child, you know, but we were going to do it. Didn't matter, because we were asked the question, are you willing to raise him? You know, yeah, we are. Yeah, we will do whatever we have to do. That's my grandbaby, and he said that's his son. Yeah, we will do whatever we have to do. That's God's child. So, you know, it's what we do. But, and I'm still learning the faith walk. I have my moments, you know, and I'll tell God, you know. Actually, I just bought this frame above my bed because sometimes, you know, my faith gets a little weak, and then, but it says, give it to God and go to sleep. And I look at it every night before I go to bed, and I'm like, there you go, Lord, it's all yours, you know. And I'm learning to do that more and more and more. So,
yeah,
but it's a journey.
I guess compared to what you faced, anything else would be just like a pin drop, you know,
Yeah.
just like a drop of water. Anything else would be so insignificant compared to what you've already been through.
Yeah, you would think so. You would think so. Yeah, and actually my husband and I were talking about that the other night, where it's like, there was something that happened, and it's like, you know, if we can get through our son dying, we can get through anything. Come on now. We were talking about that the other day, you know. But, you know, it's amazing how God just allows you to do that, and the way he gets you through things without, you know, making you with no scars, you know. I mean, you still remember it. You still remember the stuff, but the scars aren't there to where you're hurting all the time, you know. I hurt for him for a long time because I saw frustration and anger and aggravation, because he went through a lot of anger and frustration. Like he said, why me? Until he got to the point where he figured, you know, I mean, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but I know he realized, you know, it was him. He did this, you know, and I've told him over and over again. I used to tease him, I wish God loved me as much as he loves you, because the devil's always been trying to take his life since the day he was born. And I said, you got something so special, boy, why don't you just give it up and move on with your life with God? Because he's got something, he almost died when he was born. I mean, it's just like, I said, man, I told him, I said, you're special. Get on with it. You got big things going on. I told him that. I told him I'd tell you that. So it's amazing. He is. And his son is very special. He has a special heart too.
Yes. So, like, some people say that God is the God of second chances, but second chances are pretty rare. It's like not everyone who has an accident or has an overdose or something happens and they die will have someone around them who has the faith to make certain that if it's not really that person's time to go, that they get resurrected from death. And, you know, we don't all have second chances. We're only guaranteed. Are you like part cat or something? Because they say that cats have nine lives.
No.
And, but it's like, we're only guaranteed one, and you got like a second chance, but not everybody has a second chance, third chance. So when you were born, and then when you were in 2008, and then since then, has there been like another chance at life?
I got in an accident, maybe like in when was that? 1998, 97. A bad accident, and when my sister. She wrecked her car going to school, and it was crazy. Like the whole car was smashed in. Like the car was like a pancake, pretty much. And they took a picture of it, and my seat, the passenger seat, was in perfect condition. Like it don't even look like anything was touched on it. Everything else was just mumbled and just shattered. Everything was just crushed in, besides my seat. You know, it was just...
And everybody in the car was hurt pretty bad. He just hurt his arm, that was it.
Wow, like the whole car was crushed,
yeah.
Except your seat. And that was in 1998? Okay.
And I was at the hospital with my dad having a stroke. And they bringing them into the hospital emergency room at the same time. I was like, Lord. First day she ever drove to school.
So it's like we all have to be ready to go at any time, because we're not guaranteed a second chance. We're not guaranteed a third chance. It's like the Lord must really want you on this earth. He's got something for you to do because you had 3 chances. But none of us is guaranteed a second chance or a third chance. We all have to be ready. And if something happened, it's like, I'm glad that my son is here, because if something happened to me, I would want him to know to stand in faith and call Lisa and call Pastor Jeff and call the people who are going to speak faith, because I don't want to go until it's time. But it's like, I know that I'm ready, and I hope the people who are watching and listening know that they're ready. And if anyone is in a position where you don't know what would happen if you would pass away right now, I can just walk you through a few scriptures in the book of Romans where it says, if you believe in your heart and you confess with your mouth that Jesus Christ has died for you and God has raised him up from the dead, then you shall be saved. And what happened when Jesus died, you know, he was in heaven before he died. He was in heaven. He came to earth to live as a perfect human, as the Son of God here on earth. And when he died, he didn't just take my sins or your sins. He took the sins of every single person who ever did anything bad against you. So it's like, when I say Jesus Christ died for my sins, his death also paid the price for everything bad that happened to me, the things that I wasn't at fault for. So if somebody has done something bad to me, I can know that I can forgive that person because the price has already been paid. So if you're listening and maybe something bad has happened in your life, you can just get that out of the way, because Jesus Christ paid the price for that on the cross. And if you believe that he came to earth to live as the perfect God-man on earth and die for you, and that God has raised him up from the dead, then you will be saved. And even if you don't have a praying mom who's going to have the faith and pray you back to life, you can live in eternity with Jesus Christ in heaven and live in that city of gold that Justin saw. And you can live where you feel that your body is in a healthy state, and you can do somersaults when you're 90, and you can just live in the glory and experience the glory of God for eternity, for the rest of your spiritual life. And God has great things planned for us that we can't even imagine. And we're not promised a second chance, but a second chance at life on this physical earth. But Jesus Christ wants to give everyone the opportunity to live with him in heaven for eternity. So if that's something that you want to do, I'm not going to put words in your mouth. You can just pray to God from your own heart and tell him that you believe that Jesus Christ is his only son, that Jesus Christ died for you, and that God has raised him from death. And the Word of God says that you will be saved, that you believe in your heart and confess with your mouth, and you will be saved. After that point, get yourself into a Bible-believing church. And if you can't find a church, get yourself with a group of Christians that believe the Bible, and just meet with the Christians and study the Word of God and pray together on a regular basis and see what God does next. Justin and Lisa, do you guys have any further comments?
No, just that God is so good, and
All the time.
all the time. That's our favorite saying. All the time. He never forsakes us. He never, we don't understand everything that goes on, but we just got to believe that everything he does is for a purpose, and we just stay in prayer, and like you said, just put him first in everything, and just know that his way is the best way, the only way, and to just keep believing and just stay in faith and put him first in your life. That's what I tell my children. Put him first in your life, and you can't go wrong. You just got to believe that he's going to direct your path, and that's the way to go.
Amen. And Caleb, if something happens and I go before my time, remember, call Pastor Jeff and call Lisa, okay? And Lisa will not let anyone in the room who does not speak faith, okay? Okay.
Thank you.